Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. My name is Mark Sheen, and I will be your presenter today for this edition of Getting Started, E-Rate First Steps. I'm going to spend the first couple of minutes here talking to you about who I am and introducing myself, and we'll let some more people join the stream. But I didn't want to take up the regular webinar time. We've got a lot of ground to cover today with simple introductions, so I'll start now a little bit early. First of all, I'd like to make a note that those of you who are showing up, make sure that you log into the chat. It's our interactive feature. It's how we'll be able to take your questions. So without further ado, let me introduce myself. My name is Mark Sheen. I am one of the founding members of the Collective Tech. I've been in education for over 8 years, specifically in technology education. Started the Collective Tech a number of years ago with E-Rate specifically in mind, and have been doing E-Rate training, E-Rate webinars such as this, and helping schools maximize their E-Rate discount portion and funding as much as possible, pretty much exclusively for the last 2.5 years. So hopefully there's a lot that can be learned. There's a lot that we're going to cover this evening. The Collective IT is an E-Rate approved vendor. We cover Priority 2 services, which if you're not sure what those are, I'll explain those a little bit further on in the webinar. And I'd like to start off by saying just a couple of things. First of all, like I said before, if you haven't signed up for the chat, go ahead and do that. Take a moment in that chat as your very first chat post just to introduce yourself, tell me your name, where you're from, and maybe something interesting about yourself. You can go ahead and do that now. I'd also like to start off by making a couple of assumptions about you, the audience. So first of all, I'm assuming that most of the people here, because most of the people interested in E-Rate come from a school. Now, if you're a library or a consortium or any of the other qualified entities that E-Rate works with, that's just fine. Most of this information is going to come right across, but don't be offended if I keep referring to you as a school. Really, that's just an assumption that I'm making. Second of all, we're going to assume, just for simplicity's sake, that you're a single site. So there are a lot of times where a school is a district with 3 or 4, maybe even 15 schools under it. All of the same principles apply in E-Rate to a single school as they do to an entire district. So it's actually pretty easy to take a single school and then just multiply it across all of the schools of your district to be able to come up with an E-Rate program for an entire district. So that's another assumption that I'll make, is that we're a single school. I'm going to assume that because you're at this webinar that you have little to no E-Rate experience. I think that's justifiable. E-Rate can look like a very complicated program on the outside. And once you've done it a couple of times, you think back and you think to yourself, wow, that really wasn't hard at all. But I'm going to assume that we're at that point where E-Rate still looks a little bit scary. And so we're going to take it slow. I'm going to show you just how easy it is in a lot of cases, and some of maybe the little tips and tricks that, having been through E-Rate as many years as I have, I've picked up along the way. Finally, I'm going to assume, although this is not necessary, that I'm speaking with entities that are within Arizona. The Collective Information Technology only services the state of Arizona. So we're just going to choose that as our home ground today. But once again, if you're outside of Arizona, that's just fine. You'll still find this information useful. Okay, so what are we going to do tonight? We are going to break this up into about 3 subsections. The first of which is, what is E-Rate? What is it exactly? Who's the program administrator? What's it for, and what's it designed to do? The second 2 parts are actually going to get you into the program. We're going to, first of all, talk about technology planning. I know that's the scariest part. We are going to talk about it all, and I've even got a worksheet set up for you to help you guys out with the technology plan. And the last I guess, portion of this evening will be filling out a Form 470. And this is where I'm going to amaze all of you. A lot of people think that, I've heard from administrators before, E-rate, filing for E-rate is harder than filing your taxes. It's not true. It really isn't true. E-rate is a simple program. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to prove it to you tonight. We are all going to file, or at least start to file, our Form 470, our request for services, and I'm going to show you that it can be done in less than 10 minutes, okay, during this webinar. The last 10 minutes, that's exactly what we're going to do, is you're going to start your application. Now, you might have to go back later and populate some of that information, because I don't expect you to come to this webinar with all of the information knowing exactly what you need, but we're going to start the application, and I'm going to show you how to get back to it later once you're ready to finish it up. So with that in mind, that's where we get to. We're going to go ahead and start. So the first portion is entitled, What is E-rate? E-rate is a program administered by the USAC. The USAC is the Universal Service Administration Corporation. They're a subsidy of the FCC. And it is their job to take funds that they collect from telecommunication companies and to distribute that to 4 different programs. Those 4 programs are High Cost, Lifeline, Rural Healthcare, and the one that we're all concerned with today, Schools and Libraries. They distribute money to each of these categories in different forms. The only one that I'm going to spend any kind of time on today is Schools and Libraries, because our time is short. But you're welcome to go to their website at usac.org to find out more about the other 3 programs. The Schools and Libraries program is synonymous with the name E-rate. So if you've ever wondered what is E-rate and how is it different than Schools and Libraries, there really is no difference. Schools and Libraries is E-rate. E-rate stands for education rate, and it's basically saying that that education institutions get a subsidized rate for some of the items that we're going to talk about later. So let's talk about the Schools and Libraries, or the E-rate program. This year, they've committed over $3 billion to the Schools and Libraries program. That's how much money there is in the E-rate system. If you divide that by the number of applicants, it comes out to about $60,000 per school applicant in E-rate funding. So when you think about what could I do with $60,000 per site, this is a really big thing, whether you are a single school or whether you are a large consortium of schools or a district. That's a lot of money. And it's a lot of money that if you haven't taken advantage of the program in the last few years, that could be yours. There are 4 categories of service. The categories are telecom and internet. Telecom and internet are what's called Priority 1. They're the first 2 categories that are funded, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. There is also Priority 2 category, which includes internal connections. This is for things like network components, backbone, wiring, things like that. And it's also basic maintenance of internal connections, which is making sure that those things function in the way that they were designed. So you've got your Priority 1, telecom and internet, and your Priority 2, internal connections and basic maintenance. Now, one of the things a lot of schools ask me is my school eligible? If you look on the Form 470 worksheet that I passed out in the last email, let me share this with you here. The 470 worksheet actually has right up on the top, the USAC Form 470. If you give that a click, it'll actually take you to the Schools and Libraries website. And on that Schools and Libraries website, you will get a chance to see all about, actually let's just back up a second to step 1. Okay, I'm wrong. Sorry. It's, here we go. It's going to be under step 4 here, where you actually find your discount matrix and calculating discounts. Now, under calculating discounts, you're actually going to see a lot of great information about how exactly your discount will be calculated. So to put it short, the easiest way to calculate, like I said, we're going to assume that we're speaking with a lot of schools. The easiest way is if you take part in the National School Lunch Program. If you're an NSLP school, you use the percentage of your kids who use free and reduced lunch as your discount percentage. Now there's a matrix that kind of offsets that a little bit, and let me show you that. Here it is. This is the USAC discount matrix. You can see that there's a different discount matrix for urban locations as opposed to rural locations. And let's just say I have a 76% free and reduced lunch school. Well, that makes me fall between 75 to 100%. I can look over here, and let's say I'm in an urban area. My discount will be 90%. So what does that mean for me? That means that if I am a participant in the E-rate program, I can send in my telephone bill and my internet bill, and I can request 90% of those bills be reimbursed to me. So that's what E-rate is, as a reimbursement program. Moving on, I'll let you guys take a look at the USAC website for any more information on that. So is my school eligible? This is a big question of a lot of people who come to me. The answer very simply is yes. Now some schools have a higher discount percentage than others, and some schools will reach approval or not on their priority 2 depending on that discount percentage. But is it in every school's best interest to apply for E-rate? Absolutely. Schools and libraries, even with the lowest discount percentage, will receive money back on their telephone and internet bills if they start the E-rate program. Schools and libraries are entities that are obviously available, and there are some other non-instructional and non-traditional facilities that fit the bill. So for more information on that, again, I'll refer you to the USAC website. And we already talked about how to determine the discount, which is right there again on the USAC website. Okay, so that brings us to our next portion, which is technology planning. Now, for those of you who received the most recent email, in that email you will find a link that is called Technology Plan Worksheet. And if you guys would spend just 1 second, I'll open it up while you open it up, and let's take a look at it together. The very first step in filing for E-rate is having a technology plan on file. Now, a technology plan, although it's not needed necessarily for priority 1 services, only necessary for priority 2, technology plan helps you get an idea as a school in a fairly simple way of what it is that you need. A lot of the things in a technology plan as a school you end up submitting regardless, and so there are just a few extra steps that you have to take to qualify you for priority 2 funding. And just to give you an idea, a lot of times schools say, well, why don't I just skip the hassle and stick with priority 1? About 25% of the USAC funds end up going towards priority 1 funding between telecom and internet. If you're really interested in taking advantage of the bulk of the funds that the USAC has to distribute, you need to get in the priority 2 game. Priority 2 will help you put in new network infrastructure, and it'll also help you maintain that with qualified service providers. So as you can see on the screen here, we've got I've got my Getting Started Webinar Technology Planning Worksheet up, and let's go through some of the things that we see here. Now, first of all, the Arizona Department of Education requires a technology plan for any priority 2 services. So if on your application you notice that it says a tech plan is not required, that's talking to another state. That's not necessarily for us. We'll start off by going and clicking on the link, the Technology Plan Flowchart. Okay? And I want everybody to take a look at this, because this is prepared by the Arizona Department of Education. And it really gives you a good idea of the steps in the process to begin technology planning. Technology planning is one of those things that as an entire unit, it looks really scary. It's a big stack of papers. It's a lot of information. You have to submit it in different places. But when you break it down and take a look at it just like you're seeing on the screen now, it actually becomes not so scary. It's really just a step-by-step thing. And if you do each of these steps, let's say you spend a day or so on each of these steps, you can have your entire technology plan done in about a week. The first step in the process is to select tech committee members. Now, if you go back to the worksheet, that I gave you, I give a section in there where you can write down who you think would be great on your technology team. I put up to 10 spots. You can have a lot more than that, or you can have 2 or 3 people. It's really up to you and the size of your school and what you think would work best. Usually people who make up a technology planning committee are administrators, people in operations or finance departments of a school, and absolutely anybody that you have working in the technology department, the head of that. Lots of times schools choose to put teachers and other staff on it just to get some advice from other, or parents to get advice from other avenues. Again, it's completely up to your school to match your needs to who's going to be on that technology plan committee. So once you've got your technology plan committee all set, then you review your progress on your prior year's plan. Let's say you have a plan for a prior year. That makes it so easy because really all you're doing is updating that. But let's say you didn't do one last year. That's okay. Right here is a link. I won't click on it right now, but right here is a link to a needs assessment. A needs assessment is the meat and potatoes of your technology plan. It's where you actually go through and you set strategies and action steps in order to meet those strategies and set goals for your school. You can download a template right here from this document, and you can get started on it right away. So even if you don't have one in the past to work off of, they've prepared a nice template for you to go from. So what you're going to do next is you're going to review your the goals and standards that you've put into Elite, and you're also going to make sure that you've got action steps that meet those goals. And when you're done with all of this, you should be done with your needs assessment. All that there is left to do is sign the SEPA agreement and send it all in. So I know I made that sound a little bit easier than it is, but let's take a look at this worksheet. And I've got some information for you that'll help you get through it. First of all, research. When was the last technology plan submitted and approved? That's something that you might want to know. If you had one approved not too long ago, you might not even need to reapprove it. Technology plans go on a 3-year revolving basis. So if you have one less than 3 years ago that was approved, you're done. The most that you might need to do is revise that. Next, who's responsible for updating tech goals in Elite? Who are your Elite personnel, and what have they put for your tech goals? Chances are they asked around and know what your technology goals are, and if you find that out and find out what your current technology goals are, then you might have a jump start on your technology plan as it stands. Next, what are your greatest technology challenges? Here's a chance to think about what it is that you would change technology-wise about your school. I put on a couple of examples. Is your internet speed slow? Do you have a problem with curriculum delivery? You would like to be able to do that in a more streamlined fashion. Are your staff not trained up? Do your kids not have access to it? Is your infrastructure spotty? Do you have dead spots of wireless in your building, or wall jacks that simply don't work? Or maybe just an old server that isn't doing the job anymore? These are all things that you should identify when you identify your challenges. Next, what areas have you achieved a measure of success with technology? So here's a chance for you to say, hey, here's where we're doing well. Maybe we can tweak it a little to do a little bit better, but this is an area that most of all we just want to maintain. And finally, you want to think about goals. What goals can you realistically set to maintain those things that you're doing right, and then to also overcome the hurdles that you've identified for yourself? If you do this research document as I've laid it out, you will be 9/10 of the way there to putting it all on paper and actually having a technology plan needs assessment done, ready to submit. Okay? Next part is action. If you have a formal technology plan called a needs assessment, then review it. Don't start from scratch. Don't reinvent the wheel. Make sure that you're using anything in the past. Even if it's a number of years old, it's better than starting from nothing. Second of all, update or write a new needs assessment for the next 3 years. Now, I'm saying this assuming that your old one has expired. If it hasn't expired, then that's an unnecessary step. Next, translate the strategy and action steps from your needs assessment right into ELITE and make sure that that lines that up. One great thing about this is that one hand washes the other. You had to do those action steps anyway, and so by creating a technology plan, you've also made somebody else's life a lot easier, whoever your ELITE person is, and you've given them the action steps and strategies that they need to upload to ELITE. Finally, sign this SEPA form, upload all of the documents, and then you just send a quick note saying, hey, I've uploaded all of my documents, send it off to techplans@azed.gov, and then wait a couple of weeks for the response. My experience with az.ed.gov is that they're great at getting turnaround. Compared to a lot of government agencies, they're great at sending you back revisions if they're needed or sending on that letter that you need. Okay? So that brings us to the end of that portion. If you have any other questions, technology planning, unfortunately, as a service provider, is something that I can only give you general information about. If you're looking for more specific information, search around to the brother and sister schools that you have in your area. Somebody who's very savvy at that can help you out. Or my absolute suggestion is just call down to the Arizona Department of Education. They're extremely helpful in getting you started with that. And if you start by calling them, then they know who you are and they know you're trying to complete this for the first time. And they generally give you a little bit of slack when you send in that technology needs assessment. So by all means, if you have any questions about that, let me know about them, and you can give me an email. Just reply to one of the emails that I've sent you, and I'll send you in the right direction. And I apologize in advance if I can't give you the exact answers on technology planning. All right. Well, that takes us to our very first break. What we're going to do is we're going to take a 3-minute break. During that break, I'd like everyone to sign on to the chat and ask any questions that you have so far. I will answer those immediately after the break, but this is really just a chance for you to stand up, stretch, figure out anything that you need to, print up documents if you want to be taking notes, basically catch up with all of the information that we've had so far and ask any questions that you might have. So we'll go ahead and take that break, and I will see you back in 3 minutes.